Some war stories refuse to sit still. The facts are clear, but the way they're remembered or ignored is anything but. Henry Johnson's story hinges on a single night in France during the First World War, a night so chaotic it earned him the name he never asked for, and recognition arrived quickly, then faded just as fast. What interests me isn't the nickname or the medals, it's how one moment can define a life, and how easily that life can slip out of view once the noise dies down. Let's go back to where it actually starts. William Henry Johnson was born in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and later moved up to New York State when he was a teenager. And he's not coming from money or comfort or any of that destined for greatness stuff. Early jobs listed for him a proper graft: chauffeur, soda mixer, labourer, porter at Albany's Union Station. So if you're imagining the sort of life where you're constantly being reminded where society thinks you belong, yeah, that. Except he still signs up when the US enters World War I. June 5th, 1917, he enlists. And every time I read that, I can't help thinking how mad the timing is. He's joining an army that's segregated in a country that's segregated to go fight for freedom in Europe. That's not me making a speech, that's just the basic maths of the situation. He's assigned to Company C, 15th New York Infantry Regiment, a segregated unit, the one that becomes the famous 369th Infantry Regiment, later nicknamed the Harlem Hellfighters. Now, the Harlem Hellfighters name sounds like they turned up in France as instant legends. The reality is, at first, it's a lot of waiting, training, being under-resourced and getting treated like a workforce rather than soldiers. When they arrive in France in December 1917, US Army leadership has black units doing manual labour, unloading supplies, digging latrines, the jobs nobody wants to brag about later. And here's the bit that always makes my jaw tighten. Even when they finally get near the front, it's not just enemy fire they're up against. Accounts from official history summaries describe white American soldiers treating black troops poorly, with some refusing to be stationed in the same trenches. Imagine that for a second. You're about to go into a place where artillery can erase you from existence in a blink, and the person next to you is still prioritizing racism. Eventually, General John J. Pershing makes the call to detach the 369th to serve alongside the French in April 1918. The French were short on troops and, compared to the Americans at the time, generally treated these men with more respect as fellow soldiers. So Henry Johnson finds himself re-kitted with French helmets and French rifles, taught enough French to understand orders, and placed near the Argonne Forest with French units. If you've ever seen photos of the Western Front, the tree stumps, the mud, the wrecked ground, that's not cinematic, that's a meat grinder with weather. The 369th spends the first weeks with little combat, according to museum summaries. And I can almost feel the tension in that, because little combat doesn't mean calm, it means you're waiting for your introduction to hell. Then comes the night that welds Henry Johnson's name into history. It's mid-May 1918, often recorded as May 15th, with some accounts describing the action during the night of May 14th to 15th. Henry Johnson and Private Needham Roberts are out on night duty near a bridge they're guarding, part of a thin line holding a position near Argonne. Night patrol is already horrible, even when nothing happens. You're tired, it's dark, every sound is suspicious, and your imagination is doing sprints. Then you add in the fact that German raiding parties deliberately went out at night to snatch prisoners gathering intelligence and cause panic. And the first warning isn't a shout or a flare, it's the sound of wire cutters. That tiny detail is so nasty because it means the enemy is already close enough to be touching your defences. It's not they're coming, it's they're here. Johnson acts fast. In the National Museum of the US Army account, he opens a grenade box and tells Roberts to run back and warn the French allies. So Roberts moves, and Johnson starts lobbing grenades into the dark. The Germans return fire, grenades come back their way. Roberts gets hit by shrapnel and at some point returns towards Johnson, wounded. So now it's not just hold the line, it's hold the line while your mate is bleeding beside you. Johnson empties his grenades, the enemy still advances. He's hit by enemy fire. He fires back until he runs out of ammunition. And this is usually the part where the music gets all dramatic, because what happens next is just brutal survival. With no ammo left, Henry Johnson uses his rifle like a club. That's the kind of stuff you do when you've been reduced to whatever still works. A rifle stops being a ranged weapon and becomes a lump of wood and metal you swing at shapes in the dark. Then he notices Germans trying to take Roberts, so he pulls his last weapon, a bolo knife. A bolo knife is basically a heavy blade, closer to a working tool than a fancy dagger, and it tells you exactly what range this fight had collapsed into. No distance, no safety, no time. Johnson goes in. According to the museum summary, he uses the knife to cut down 2 enemy soldiers, gets shot again, and still keeps lunging trying to protect Roberts. At some point, the German raiding party breaks and retreats. His attacks, described as frantic, ferocious, wreck their morale. And that's the part that's difficult to properly picture unless you slow down and really sit with it. This isn't a neat battlefield moment. It's not lines of soldiers firing in formation. It's a single sentry post in the dark with 2 men and a wave of attackers trying to overwhelm them. By the end of it, Henry Johnson has taken 21 wounds. Estimates commonly given in official summaries say he killed 4 and wounded somewhere between 10 and 20. And for a second, I always think, how is he still upright long enough to even register any of that? French reinforcements arrive after the Germans have already pulled back, and Johnson and Roberts are evacuated to the aid station. That's where I want to pause the action, because this is the moment that gets lost when people tell his story like it's just a mad war anecdote. He's not standing tall in perfect condition after some Hollywood scrap. He's injured badly, enough to need evacuation, and this is still early 1918. Medicine exists, sure, but we're not talking modern trauma care. We're talking field bandages, stretcher bearers, and stench of antiseptic and mud, and that half-delirious state where the adrenaline wears off and your body starts cashing the checks. And somewhere in the aftermath, the French put it into words in the official orders. Henry Johnson gave a magnificent example of courage and energy. They award him the Croix de Guerre avec Palme, one of the French's top awards for valour. And in accounts of that night, he becomes known as Black Death. Now, here's a detail I love, because it's so human and so unpolished. When Johnson later spoke about the event, he downplayed it completely. He said, "There wasn't anything so fine about it. Just fought for my life. A rabbit would have done that." That line has always hit me harder than any grand speech. No myth-making, no chosen one, just a man admitting it was survival. The raw animal part of you that refuses to lie down. And that's where things start to get messy in a different way, because surviving the night is only the start of what this story does to him. The injuries don't politely vanish once the medals come out. The attention doesn't last. The system that should have helped him doesn't exactly rush to do the right thing. For now though, in that moment, in the wake of the raid, Henry Johnson is still in France, still wrapped up in war, still part of a regiment that's about to earn a reputation the hard way, day after day, trench after trench. And the uncomfortable truth is, even with all that blood spilled on foreign soil, the fight waiting for him back home is a different kind of cruel. When Henry Johnson leaves the aid station, he doesn't leave the war behind. He carries it with him, in his body, in the way his hands shake, in the injuries that never quite knit back together. The French patch him up enough to survive, enough to stand again, but not enough to pretend that night didn't take something permanent with it. He remains with the regiment in France, though he's no longer fit for the frontline duty in the same way. The 369th keep fighting, longer than any other American unit in the front, and earns its reputation the hard way, day after day. Johnson becomes part of the story rather than its centre, which is how war usually works. One moment defines you, then history moves on without asking whether you're ready. When the war ends and the regiment returns home in 1919, New York throws them a parade, Fifth Avenue, thousands lining the streets, bands playing, flags everywhere. It's loud, proud, and for a brief moment it feels like something has shifted. Johnson marches with them. The man who fought off a German raiding party with grenades, a rifle butt and a knife walks down a city street while people cheer his name. If you freeze the story there, it almost looks like a happy ending. It isn't. Back in civilian life, the uniform comes off and so does most of the interest. Johnson's injuries don't magically disappear once he's home. He struggles to work. His body gives out on him. There are records of him suffering from ongoing pain and psychological distress. Not dressed up, not labelled in modern terms, just a man who can't fully re-enter normal life after what he's been through. At one point, he attempts to speak publicly about his experiences, giving talks about the war. Instead of support, he's reportedly warned by US authorities to stop wearing his French medal while doing so. The Croix de Guerre, the one awarded for extraordinary bravery, suddenly becomes something he's better off hiding. That part always sits badly with me. Not because medals matter more than people, but because it shows how quickly recognition turns conditional. You're brave when it suits the story. You're inconvenient when you don't fit the version people are comfortable with. Johnson's health continues to decline. He spends his time in hospitals. He struggles financially. There's no steady safety net waiting for him, no proper system to catch a man who gave everything he had and came back damaged in ways no parade could fix. He dies in 1929 at just 36 years old, quietly. No crowds, no speeches, no flag-draped coffin. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery, but even that comes later. Recognition applied retroactively, like an apology written too late to be read. For decades, his story exists in fragments, regimental histories, old newspaper clippings, museum displays. He's remembered as a footnote, a nickname, an anecdote, told when people talk about the Harlem Hellfighters. Impressive, but distant. Then slowly things change. In 1996, the US Army awards him the Purple Heart. In 2003, he receives the Distinguished Service Cross, acknowledging that what he did that night in 1918 wasn't just remarkable, it was among the highest acts of bravery an American soldier can perform. Finally, in 2015, nearly a century after the Argonne, Henry Johnson is posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest military honor long overdue. And that's the strange tension at the heart of this story. By the time the recognition is complete, the man himself has been gone for generations. The courage was always there. The evidence was always there. What was missing was the will to look at it honestly. Henry Johnson's life isn't just a war story. It's a reminder of how uneven history can be, how loudly it celebrates moments and how quietly it abandons people once those moments pass. His achievements is undeniable, holding a position alone, wounded, outnumbered, refusing to let his fellow soldiers be taken. That night in France didn't just stop a raid, it saved a life, and it left an imprint so strong that another army recognised it instantly. But his struggle matters just as much. The years of pain, the poverty, the indifference, the long wait for a country to fully admit what it owed him. Johnson didn't fail after the war. The system around him did. When people talk about bravery, they often mean the dramatic instant, the charge, the fight, the moment you can frame and medal. Henry Johnson shows something harder to sit with. Bravery followed by neglect, courage followed by silence, and dignity held on to long after the applause fades. He didn't ask to be a symbol. He didn't chase a nickname. He fought because he had to, survived when he shouldn't have, and lived the rest of his life carrying the cost of that survival. And maybe that's why his story still matters. Not because it's neat or heroic in the way we like, but because it's honest. I'll see you in the next one.